Musically meditated.
Musically meditated. Musically meditated.
All right. Welcome to Musically Meditated Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Riley. First and foremost, this episode is brought to you by Hobart Lumber Company and Ace Hardware. They're located at 630 Main Street, Hobart, Indiana. Their number is 219-945-3031. You can also check them out at www.hobartlumber.com. So thank you to Hobart Lumber and Ace Hardware. You can find lumber and building materials there, hardware, home improvement, cabinets, and flooring. And they got some really cool Yeti, isn't it Yeti? I think it's Yeti. Yeti coolers there. So check out Hobart Lumber. Secondly, if you are a new listener, please make sure you subscribe to Musically Meditated Podcast. We are on YouTube. If you have an iPhone, make sure you subscribe to the Apple Podcasts on your phone. If you have a Droid, we are on Stitcher. We are on Google Play. We're on iHeartRadio. We're basically on every listening platform you could imagine, but it's really important for us to start getting up in the algorithms and competing with these other music podcasts because they have a really good corporate background and we're pretty independent. So there's no reason why Musically Meditated can't be on the top 50 podcasts in the country. So to all the loyal listeners out there, I appreciate it, but I have to ask you to remember to subscribe and share this podcast with people who would enjoy the content. So now moving on, after all of that, I have Mr. Dave Fajman.
Yes.
There we go. Dave Fajman. Welsh name. Sounds a little Irish, but hey, we have Dave Fajman here from Smugglers Coffee. What's up, dude?
Hey, not much, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. You did a pretty far drive too from Hobart to Munster.
St. John.
St. John. I'm not going to put your address out there.
No, that's all right.
But I met Dave probably last summer, and I met him through Gabe. We just had Gabe on last episode or a couple episodes, depending on where we dropped this one. And it was really neat because it was like a coffee tasting. I don't know. How would you describe it?
I kind of came in, talked about Smugglers Coffee, talked about our barrel aging program, just the different coffees that we have, and
right, like a little taste, a little taste tester.
Yep.
So yeah, Dave, I didn't even say the name of your coffee, but it's Smugglers Coffee.
Yeah, Smugglers Coffee.
And where could you pick up Smugglers, Dave?
All right, so our coffee is available right now at Grindhouse Cafe in Griffith. We were just picked up by Wiseway in Crown Point. Then there's places like the Open Bottle and Crafted out in Illinois, plus Whiskey Hill Brewing, Arrowhead Ales out in New Lenox. I think Hailstorm Brewing probably still has some. We were at the Librarium for a little bit.
Here in Hobart.
Yeah, here in Hobart. A couple places here and there.
Okay, cool.
So,
now, what about people listening around the country if they wanted to check out Smugglers Coffee? Is that available? Would you ship?
So we are actually in North Carolina. There's a Virginia. I'm sorry, place in Virginia that has us. But if you're not in those areas, there's our website. It's store.smugglerscoffee.com.
Okay, cool. We'll put the link in the description for you for sure too. So
cool.
Yeah, everybody check out Smugglers. I remember going to the taste. I'll just call it like a taste tester there. Now there's 3 different roasts of coffee, or am I incorrect, or how could you break that down? I mean, I know there's light, mild, and heavy, right? Or how's that go?
So it's basically like light, medium roast, and then dark roast. Most of our stuff falls in the lighter to medium category. We don't go to the dark roast. I feel that if you go to the dark roast, you're tasting the roast flavor and not the bean itself. And plus, when you go dark, you're losing a lot of the caffeine too, which is why a lot of people drink their coffee. So you get more caffeine in a light roast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Cool. So you learn something every day. No, that's badass.
So
and I remember your light roasts were just awesome. Like in comparison to dark, like my grandparents always drank really, really strong dark coffee.
Right. Yeah.
And I think you were saying too, like, is that the burning of the barrel? Do they do that, or like?
It's what it is. Like a dark roast. It's they just go. It's all right. So if you get like a Starbucks coffee, it's easier to control the flavor from a place in Chicago and a place in France. They're going to taste the same because it's easier to get a consistent taste with the dark roast. Where if they did a light roast, it'll be a different flavor because they change throughout the year. It'll be a different, like you could get the same coffee from the same farm, but it might not taste the same year to year. So it's a way for them to quality control that they're going to have the same flavor by a dark roast. You're not tasting the actual coffee itself or the bean itself. You're tasting the roast.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's just like if you're ordering a steak well done, it's going to taste like a steak well done. I mean, it's not, even if it's the best grass-fed, dry-aged steak, you order it well done, it's still going to taste like shit.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah.
I mean,
you're ruining the meat.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
burning.
getting a very good coffee bean,
why the hell would you roast the shit
right?
out of it?
Don't go. Yeah,
Okay.
it
Less
makes-
is more, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't you originally trying to go like the craft beer route? Weren't you a big craft beer guy? Or
Yeah.
okay, so what's the backstory on that?
All right, so I used to be a writer for a craft beer website. Actually, a couple of them. The big one though was called the Pints Templars. So I basically covered with a few other people the Chicagoland area. And I was home brewing. I was just going as much breweries as I could. I got to know a lot of different brewers. And I basically told my wife, I'm like, look, I want to like get into beer. And I did this one article, and I interviewed a couple brewers, and it was about coffee and beer. And interviewing the brewers, and I got to interviewing the guys that roasted the coffee, and it got me really interested in coffee. And I had been drinking a little bit more coffee, like from Dark Matter out of Chicago, Intelligentsia, Tugboat Coffee, which are, Chicagoland area roasters. So I started trying all their coffee, and I'm just like, holy shit, man, this is like actual good stuff. Mm-hmm. And then it was just like, I told my wife, I'm just like, it's either beer or coffee. I want to do one of these two things. And she just looked at me, and she's like, without hesitation, she goes, coffee. So
okay, so that's how it happened.
Yeah.
Awesome. Shout out to Fluid Coffee. We had Allison and Chuck on Musically Meditated before, so everybody go back and check that episode out. It's been a year, but they came on and they shared, their passion and love for coffee and kind of like the bean roasting process like you did.
Yeah.
But they did mention how do you say it?
Intelligentsia.
And from what I recall, they mentioned like how they kind of have the lockdown on the beans. Like, is that true? Like, where do you get your beans from? Like, what's that like?
So I get my beans through a distributor, and it's a distributor that I trust. They go to the farms because I mean it's a big thing. If you don't know coffee, there is like a lot of slave labor in coffee. But if you go to the farms and you see what's going on, being so small, I can't do that. But there's a company that I deal with called Genuine Origin. I deal with my rep out of Chicago. They have people who actually go to all these farms.
Oh, cool.
And they're there all the time. They're making sure that the farmers are getting paid well. So I really trust what they do. And they even have, they set up trips so I can actually go to see these farms. And, Genuine Origin sets all this up. So it's really helpful for a small roaster that there is something like that. And I know that I'm not supporting some warlord over in Africa who's, just using
the people like cattle.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awful.
So that's one thing that I just kind of wanted to also be mindful of doing the coffee. Because if I were just buying from a warehouse, I wouldn't know who I'm buying it from. Where with Genuine Origin, they give you that the story about who the farmer is and everything, where it comes from. It makes you feel better as a roaster that there is that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And Dark Matter too. Like I had well, he's still my friend, but he doesn't live there anymore. But he lived in Ukrainian Village, like right next to the mothership for
Cool.
Dark Matter, and that was probably like, I don't know, the earlier 2000s.
Okay.
I don't know. Don't quote me on that. That doesn't necessarily matter. But that's when I first started to get introduced to the craft coffee scene, or you know what I mean, like the independent coffee scene, and it was right next door, and it was cool because here's this awesome segue I have here. But they really incorporated the themes of metal or music. You know, like they had a cool. I remember Doug got me a Refused batch. I don't know if you know who Refused is, but they're a Swedish hardcore, you know, kind of like hardcore post-hardcore band.
Yeah,
and for like their new album, Dark Matter had like their own bean, their own bag, and they had like the cassette tape. So he got that for me for Christmas. And then like when I would go there and hang out and visit and shit, like I believe they had a British Steel one, which was really good for like Judas Priest.
Yep, I remember that one.
And
they've done Descendants ones too.
Yeah, the Descendants ones were good. Yeah,
I usually get that one when it comes out.
Yeah, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, they were like, there was a few, is there like 2 dudes or something behind Dark Matter? I don't remember.
I have no idea.
But I remember meeting them through passing, and they were really nice guys, but I thought it was intriguing that, you know, maybe more of the underground music scene is attracted to the coffee scene and the craft beer.
Yeah.
And when I had Chuck and Allison on, I remember Allison broke it down. She was like, you know, during Prohibition, you know, you couldn't go and get a drink. So a lot of artists were going to coffee shops, and that's where they were, you know, showing their different art. And then obviously music's an art. So I think maybe that's why it kind of connects. So,
it's possible.
you know, we're going to talk about music with you too. So do you see like a connection with that, like yourself, like a little bit?
Yeah, I know back in like the 90s punk rock in Chicago, there was Sputniks in was it Orland, I think. They used to have, it was a little coffee shop, and then you got like places like the Grindhouse. They play punk rock when you're in there. Right. It's just like a good place for like a local scene kind of to go to.
Right.
It's also like, you know, I can remember being like a young punk kid in the 90s just hanging out at coffee shops even. I mean, you're too young to get into a bar.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where else are you going to go? And at the time, you know, everyone's smoking and stuff, so you can smoke in a coffee shop. Yeah, so,
right. It goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as you get older, then you got to quit the coffee, you know, or not the coffee, but the cigarettes.
Yeah.
Now you up the coffee as you get
Pretty
older,
much,
so it keeps you up. But yeah, as far as your musical journey goes, you know, could you give us a little background? Like, you know, you told me a little bit, like you started in middle school, and you're always with your pops, and like that background. Like, what's your musical background?
So, like growing up, there was always music playing in my house. I mean, my dad was always like, you know, he'd have Led Zeppelin on, he'd have Black Sabbath on. I mean, Jethro Tull. He'd have all like the classic rock stuff that he grew up with.
Sounds like my mom and dad.
And he had like this just badass old stereo, and he'd play stuff on that. I mean, records, 8 tracks, all that stuff. And that's kind of where I was always more into. I was more into that music. My mom used to listen to good stuff too. I mean, she'd have like the Beach Boys and the Beatles on. So, I mean, I kind of was into that a little bit too, but I always more gravitated towards the Led Zeppelin and the Sabbath and stuff like that. And so Chicago radio back then just kind of blew. I mean, it wasn't
You didn't like
good.
B96 back in the day?
Dude. I mean, there was Rock 103.5 at the time, but
right.
I mean, it was all just like hair metal and stuff, and that wasn't really my thing. Then one of my brother's friends came over, and he had Metallica's Black album, and you know, I remember listening to that. I was like, all right, well, this is something good, and you know, I bought that album, and then I bought Ride the Lightning, and you know, I started getting into metal, and then I'll never forget this one trip. It was like we were on it was a weekend. My dad took us out shopping. We went to a comic book store, 10th Planet.
Remember 10th Planet?
Yeah, they're still around.
Okay.
And then he took us to, it was like a little CD place. I don't remember the name of it, but it was like just like used CDs. And they had
CD Trading Post?
No, it wasn't CD Trading Post.
Okay.
man, I can't remember the name of it. They were in Matson.
Oh, it wasn't in the region?
No, this one wasn't
okay.
in the region. We were out that way for some reason, and they had like a buy one get one free sale. So I remember I picked up Megadeth, Rest in Peace, Slayer's Reign in Blood,
Win.
yeah, Sepultura Arise.
You're winning big time.
Then I got I picked up a few Iron Maidens, but the one that really stuck was Fear of the Dark, and it was that one trip. It was just like, damn, this is some good shit. And the one that really like hit hard was Megadeth's Rust in Peace. That was the one that I was listening to for like just nonstop. I mean, it was just something about that album. And then, you know, once I wore that album out, then I started getting more in Iron Maiden. Okay. And it was just, Iron Maiden was a huge part, like my early teenage years. It's like, you know, I started growing my hair long, you know, I was like,
yeah.
like it was really cool. But it was like those albums and even like the Slayer albums, I just like really got into music and the guitars and stuff like that. And then slowly it just like evolved into punk.
Okay.
It was another thing is I was in high school and, you know, I was the metalhead jock.
Okay.
And just something like I switched groups of friends, started talking to the punk rock kids. Yeah. You know, they always seemed to have more fun. So.
They did, you know, and back then we've talked about it before because you and I are around the same age. Like metal and punk rock kids really didn't cross paths. Like it wasn't okay for some reason. Like to be both, you know, and that's really silly because I got into punk later on, like more in my late teens, early 20s, because I was like, oh, I'm metal, you know, and then I was totally like into death metal and the grindcore and all the extreme shit, but it wasn't okay to like really cross. But Black Flag was the one that like helped me make that connection, you know, like I got into punk through like weird avenues like grindcore and hardcore, and then I was able to get in like Nirvana too. But not to cut you off, but go back to Metallica. Mm-hmm. There's like a theme like the last 4 or 5 episodes with guys my age, like those Metallica albums were a huge influence, like especially the Black album in general, because I remember the first time I held the Black album too, you know, it was like a big deal, and MTV was a huge deal.
Well, I mean, at the time it was Chicago radio. You're listening to Van Halen, Motley Crue, and I'm sorry, but that wasn't my stuff. I mean, I still really can't stand them.
No, I don't.
But
I don't go back to revisit.
They started playing Metallica, and it didn't sound like anything else. Mm-hmm. You know, they weren't doing high pitched screaming and stuff. It was, you know, I don't know. It was just something about it was primal, and that really kind of started it off. I mean, a lot of my friends, same way. They loved Metallica, and it was a good starter.
All right, favorite Metallica album?
Ride the Lightning.
Ride the Lightning. All right, that's 2 for 2. We had Matt Abear on. He's a friend of mine. He was a good guest. He's a great musician. He said Ride the Lightning. I'm a Master of Puppets guy.
That's a good album.
I think it's predictable. A lot of people would say that, but that's cool to hear Ride the Lightning. Now jump back to Megadeth. Okay. Why Rust in Peace? I mean, you love Dave Mustaine has that voice. Either you love it or hate it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. I can't listen to him all the time because like he makes me laugh, and I don't think he's trying to make me laugh. But you know, like when he has his like politically conscious like stuff, and he's really into it. You know, like it's like, all right, Dave. But he's a badass. Marty was great too, or is great. You know, they.
So Rust in Peace. One of my friends told me to pick that album up, and it was the song Holy Wars, The Punishment Due. And it was just, there's like a story, and it was just like, just the way that whole thing went out. It was like, I could really dig this. It's not just, you know, music. There's also a story with this. And I really kind of enjoyed that. And then, you know, Hangar 18, it was just that whole album to me was just perfect.
Their artwork was always great too. With
Vic.
With Vic.
Yeah.
And like I like how you brought that up about Dave Mustaine, because he is a better songwriter compared to Metallica or to James for that reason, for the storytelling. And like as a guitarist, like he's just a bad dude. I mean, Kirk Hammett's a badass too, but yeah, Dave was a great storyteller with a lot of that earlier Megadeth, wasn't he?
Yeah.
You know, I kind of forgot about that.
That's what I really liked about Megadeth was the storytelling part of it. And I really enjoyed that. And I think they got away from it, and they might have gone back to it, but I haven't revisited any of their albums or any of their newer stuff. But it always seemed like they had, you know, that storytelling element to it, and it was cut and dry. It wasn't, you know, let your imagination like
that was in your face, and there was a topic and there was a theme, ain't it?
I enjoyed that. And it was always fun listen for me,
for sure.
Plus, I always loved the bass guitar, and Dave Ellefson is just
great
like amazing bassist.
Remember the bass line that would always open up? MTV. What was that?
That was Iron Maiden. The
MTV News.
MTV News.
Yeah, that's like that's the coolest bass line ever.
Yeah,
but yeah, he was a badass, or he is a badass.
Yeah, he is.
Bass
he's
player.
Actually he's got his own coffee now too.
Does he?
Yeah, Elfson Coffee Company.
Oh wow.
So yeah,
cool. Very cool. See the metal in the coffee.
Yep.
And then moving, like we're going back a little bit, but Sepultura.
Yeah.
I like it was Arise was
Arise,
your first?
Yeah.
What's your favorite album by Sepultura?
Arise.
Is it?
Yeah, that's what.
You know, man, like I would love to do just the Sepultura episode. Maybe we'll bring you back and we could dive deep into Sepultura, because I really feel like they're one of the least like forgotten, appreciated metal bands.
Oh, really?
I mean, I don't know, but it's like you'll see a lot of shit online, like remembering Pantera, and rightfully so, like is one of the best, and Slayer, and your Metallicas. But dude, Sepultura, they were a force to be reckoned with, because they started off like from the gutters of Brazil, and it was very death metal. You know, like they went into death, they went into thrash, like they crossed through all the different genres and mixed it all. Like even when the new metal stuff came in, like Roots, like they were bringing some of those elements in there, but Roots hits hard.
Yeah. I was always a bigger fan of when Max Caballero was the singer for them.
Oh yeah,
he's just even like
nothing against the new guy.
No,
but the old stuff.
It's just something about Max.
It's awesome.
I mean, even I was listening to some of his newer stuff not that long ago, and it was on like Liquid Metal or something on Sirius. I had like a free trial of it. And I guess he's got like his kid playing with him now and stuff. And it's like, damn.
They played at it was a few years ago. They played at what was that place in, I can't remember now. They shut down. That doesn't matter. But they played here locally. Big Shots. It was called Big Shots. And Max's son was the drummer for Soulfly, and we talked to him for a little bit. They played with my buddy's band, Handsome Prick. Shout out to Handsome Prick. And it was a good show, man. It was a really good show, and it was just kind of a trip, like seeing Max's son there with him. But yeah, Sepultura, they were huge for me. Like I loved them. Like Arise was great. I love Chaos AD, and I love Roots.
That's another good one.
Chaos AD, like that's like the greatest gym jam ever, man. You want to lift some weights, like that's always a great go to.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to see Sepultura live?
Never got to see them live.
I got to see Soulfly, but I never got to see Sepultura.
No, I never got to see them.
I know, like him and Igor had their problems.
Yeah.
But they hashed them up. But I think they have a problem with Andreas, like the main lead guitarist.
Okay.
There was something, I don't know if you remember this, but Max married Gloria, and Gloria is his wife, but she was really big in the scene as far as kind of like a Sharon Osbourne.
Okay.
You know, like she was like a tastemaker, and then she was his manager, and she put a lot of these bands together. Well, she had a son. Max adopted the son, so it was his stepson. His name was Dana, and then Dana was murdered. Like he was held for ransom, and he was murdered. And that's kind of like when Sepultura was going through their shit. Yeah. And something happened along the lines where there was some nasty thing said, like not on purpose, but just some bitter shit like during the funeral process. Yeah. So they went their own ways, and Max, you know what I mean, did the Soulfly thing, and him and Igor, who's the drummer, they eventually got back. But I think there's still a little bit of bad blood between him and Andreas. I hope I'm saying his name right. I don't know. But yeah, Sepultura for sure. Yeah. And then Iron Maiden, I mean, What else could you say about Iron Maiden? I mean, they have their own airline.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just they're.
Dude, Iron Maiden. That was another one of the stories. Like Bruce Dickinson and Steve Harrison, those guys, just they can incorporate the storytelling in with the songs, and that was something I was always into. Fear of the Dark. That was one of my absolute favorite songs of theirs. Then you've got, The Trooper, Number of the Beast. I mean, these are all like they're outstanding albums. And
They are, man. And the storytelling is great.
Yeah.
And that kind of has a theme to do like with Smugglers as well. Like you mentioned, you do very well on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And you yourself are a D&D, a Dungeons and Dragons guy, right? So you like the role playing and the storytelling. So that kind of goes hand in hand. So I get that, I could see that now, like talking to you, like, that's your that's your jam.
That's something I've always been into. Like, even going back to the writing, like when I was doing writing for craft beer websites, it was just, telling a story. It's something that I think that music has always been really important. Like listening to Iron Maiden, listening to Megadeth, they've got the storytelling aspect of it, and it's not just some hollow song. I don't really know how to explain it, but
like more attention to detail.
Yeah,
they could paint the picture, like the scene, like if it's, I don't know, a windy day, or as opposed like to
it's just not
day.
It's just not the a catchy lyric or something, and I don't know, it's just something. They stirred something in my soul.
Like same with hip hop. I don't know if you're a hip hop fan. I am, and I think what makes a really good rapper and a really kind of rapper is the storytelling, like the attention to detail,
Absolutely.
How they're rhyming, but really catching your attention through what they have to say with the story and how much passion and emotion they have behind
That's
it.
what I think that good musicians can do that. They can do the music and they can do a good story.
Yep.
It doesn't feel cheap and hollow. I guess that's
like so scripted and just bullshit. Like, the hip hop that's out now, like the commercial stuff, like I can't get into it. A lot of it's just a basic banger that's catchy that you'll hear in the club or in the bar, and there's really nothing behind it. And you could say that too with rock and roll right now. I mean, seriously, like people like what they like, and I don't want to piss in their Kool-Aid or whatever, but Mumford and Sons, like that just ain't my jam. Like I don't really get anything out of that. I don't know. They might have some stories, but like I'm not really into it, man.
I mean, you can even say the same with like country. I'm sure there's some great country out there, and
every country song's about their ex-wife, their dog, or their pickup, right?
Pickup truck,
their pickup.
But fishing, drinking barbecue.
Like Johnny Cash was a great storyteller,
exactly.
man. I like a lot of the early originals. Like, not to shit on country, I don't really like jam it. I like a lot of outlaw stuff. I mean, I could do that, but it's just not really. Yeah. The pop country stuff, especially, like, I can't do it. But moving on or going back to punk rock. So, you like the stories, you could really identify with that. So you switch crowds a little bit and you got in the punk rock crowd because they were fun. But what drew you to the punk rock sound, I guess?
So I guess the thing that really got me to the punk rock sound was it was at a time when it was more working class. Okay. It was the I was listening to like the big one for me was Dropkick Murphys. I absolutely love that first album, Do or Die.
I love it too, man.
Mike McColgan, that dude on vocals was just amazing.
He was my favorite. That's my favorite album by them.
Yeah,
that's the one I really only go back to.
I mean, Al is a great singer. I loved him when he was with the Bruisers, but
is he the singer now?
Yeah, he's a singer now.
Okay.
Yeah, but I prefer the Mike McColgan stuff. And if you like him, Street Dogs, it's his new band. They've been around for a while now. I think he left to do Boston Fire Department.
That's the backstory. Yeah, like I believe it's the same in Chicago. You have generations of families that have done that, so it's almost like they're granted or grandfathered in. So when your card gets pulled, you go.
Yeah.
So it's like that's right when Dropkick, because when did that album probably come out? Late 90s?
It was 90. It was either 97 or 98.
Okay, yeah, so somewhere there. So nobody probably knew like they weren't commercial. You weren't hearing that one little bagpipe part before the New England Patriots kickoff, or you know what I'm saying? Like they weren't, they weren't that big in '98. So this guy's looking at like, hey, this is something a
little more secure,
a little bit more secure. So he did that. I'm sure he kicks himself in the ass a little bit now, but his new band is good.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love Street Dogs.
Okay, I checked it out a little bit because he's got like the slick back black hair, right?
Yeah, dude. So their new stuff. I mean, they're right back into that whole working class.
I love it,
and I absolutely love their new album, Stand for Something or Die for Nothing.
I'll check that out.
I've had that like when I'm roasting at my shop. I mean, that's one of the albums that I've always got on, and they've just. I love that whole thing.
Yeah, the whole working class just movement. I mean, I could go deep into it, how it started in England with the skinheads, not the racist skins or whatever, but how it started there and how, I don't know, dudes like us probably could really identify.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I really, at like, not in the 90s, but at a certain time, like I really got into Oi and a lot of the working class punk, and it's just... Yeah, got the Fred Perry polo. Like I was in, man. Like I could identify with this. And
the Doc Martens.
Yeah, the Doc Martens. But that Do or Die album, like even the album cover, it's just a bunch of working class
a bunch of working dudes,
like Boston dudes with hard hats and their arms crossed, you know, because I'm Irish. You said you're Irish. So it's just something, I don't know, man. I really feel it.
Right.
And like that album, like I'm always jamming Do or Die around St. Patty's with my family.
Right.
Shout out to my family, to the Rileys. That's on heavy repeat. Swagger by Flogamali.
Okay.
I'm always jamming that. Who else? I don't know off the top of my head. I know, like, as far as punk, just a lot of Flogamali and Do or Die, especially, like just that album.
Yeah. So there was I'm trying to think of the name. It was a really good like Irish punk band.
Was it Stiff Little Fingers?
No, not Stiff Little Fingers was good, but there was one. It was a local band. They were from Blue Island, the Tossers.
Oh, yeah, dude, Dicey O'Reilly. They did that. I forgot about them. I saw them at Reggie's.
I used to watch them live all the time. Whenever they would play at Off the Alley, it was like that was the thing to do, man. Go to Homewood.
So you remember them back then?
Oh yeah. That was like Friday or Saturday night back in high school. We'd go watch the Tossers play.
No shit.
Some play at a couple house parties and stuff. I mean,
cool.
It was a badass time for music in Chicago. I mean, especially the punk scene. It was. You'd hang out downtown Homewood. They had Record Swap right there, and then you'd go through the alley and you'd go right into the little club, little juice bar. There'd be some touring bands come through.
Cool.
You'd have a lot of local bands. It was, to me, that was like a good time for music in the Chicagoland area. There was so much going on. You would have the Fireside downtown.
Yeah, the Fireside, the Metro.
It was just a lot of good stuff for local music. And I've been out of the music scene for a while now, like local stuff, but
the internet changed it all for better and for worse, because you could really research and find some shit you've never heard about. But that community aspect of it.
Yeah, it was it was something to do for the kids. They could, you could go practice in someone's garage or someone's basement and think you're good enough. You get booked at a local club and you
made
that
it.
feeling.
Yeah,
like,
I made it.
I'm up on stage.
You're playing that Fireside, man.
Yeah, it was it was a good time to not only be a fan, but to be a musician too.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so many people. I can remember like the guys from Alkaline Trio around.
Oh wow.
It was just so much going on, and it was a good time. Like you could get up on stage, and at any time you would know a lot of the people who are other musicians there, and you could just be like, all right, well, I see these dudes are actually jamming to it, and it was just fun. Yeah. And I think it's kind of missing right now. With the local stuff.
We'll see. Well, we had Julian on, and Julian from Grindhouse, and it was cool. It was like a breath of fresh air. Like they do a lot of that stuff at the art venue. I don't remember the name of it in Hammond, and they put together like these fundraisers for political things that are important to them, which should be important to everyone.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, so it's still there. Like, you
not
know,
to the scale that it used to be.
Yeah, but not like how it was in the 90s, but it's still going on.
Right.
You know, so it's cool to see. But the Fireside, or was it? Yeah, you said Fireside Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any other good stories about Fireside? I remember I was there. They were ripping out because I always remember the drop ceiling in the Fireside. Like, it was just nasty. It was like an old bowling alley drop ceiling. It was an old bowling alley.
So I got to see a couple cool bands. There. I remember saw Slapstick there.
Cool.
They were like the guys, but it was one of the dudes from Alkaline Trio before he was in Alkaline Trio. I actually saw the death metal band Entombed there.
I saw a lot of death metal there back then.
It was right when they were doing
Wolverine Blues.
Oh,
yeah. Dude, that's my jam.
Yeah,
that was a great album.
I still have that album.
Do you really?
Yeah.
God, that's a good album.
That
Wolverine Blues was the shit.
That's hard to explain. That was like one of the best shows, but one of the most boring shows at the same time. They took forever to get on stage. Like, they sat there and they were like testing their drums for like an hour. And it's like, dude, just fucking play.
Just play.
And once they started playing, man, that place just went into a riot.
Oh, yeah.
And that was at the time when I had already transitioned to punk, but it's like I could still get into the metal stuff.
Okay.
And, you know, like you were saying before about how people, like, you were either punk or you were metal. I think another band that brought a lot of people was Motorhead.
I mean,
Ace of Spades. I mean, you could be a punk, you could be a metalhead, and it's like you could hate each other, and then Ace of Spades, and both of you guys like, yeah, it's cool.
It's very cool. I had another cool episode called "That Heavy Metal Back in the Day" with Big J. Within the last 5 or 10 episodes, it's really good. Like, he was sharing his stories about Randy Rhoads, Stevie Ray. He got to see some cool shit, and the second time he got to see Ozzy with Randy Rhoads, I'm like, who was opening? And like, I didn't know about this going in. He's like, oh, Motorhead. I'm like, what? I'm like, how are they? He's like, you know, we just kind of watched him. We're like, wow, like that's all he had to say because it's like it's Motorhead. He's like, for a 3-piece, they were loud, they were aggressive, and they got your attention. Like, could you imagine seeing Motorhead and Ozzy with Randy Rhoads in like '82?
That would have been amazing. I mean, Motorhead's one of those bands that if I could see like live, I would have loved to have seen it. That's one of those ones that I never got to see, but that would have been pretty badass.
And Lemmy was the man. He really was. How about the Misfits, man? I know we talked a little bit about the Misfits. How'd the Misfits enter your life?
All right, so I had Collection 1 and Collection 2. I mean, I think every punk had those.
Most human beings, probably.
Yeah. You know Danzig's voice.
Yeah, thanks to Metallica, because Metallica really put Misfits on the spot.
Yeah,
but
when they did the cover on was it Garage Inc? They did.
And Cliff was always wearing the Misfits shirts. More than anyone. It
was always just like that was another band that could, you know, make that transition from punk and metal, and
especially
stuff.
With Earth AD. That's where they did the good metal punk crossover. But I'm sorry, go back to your Misfits story.
You know, I had those albums, and you know, Last Caress was, you know, a good song. I always listen to that. Listen to Halloween and all that, but it was actually the Michael Graves stuff that really.
I don't know anything about it. I know the one song, like, didn't one of the Ramones drum, and they had that, like, Thinking About You, like the love ballad. It had like a little 50s swing. That song. That's the. That's
so that's
favorite.
Actually, they did that on I think it was American Psycho, but it wasn't with the Ramones drummer. I think that was when he went off to do his solo stuff. He re-recorded that song and had the Ramones drummer on that one. But I mean, he still, I guess, still does a lot of the Misfits stuff from when he was in the group.
Okay.
But it was just they had kind of a bluesy punk metal sound to him, and his voice just really kind of drew me in on that.
Did you see him back then too?
Yeah,
live?
So I actually saw them a couple times live. I got to see them at the Aragon with with Megadeth.
Whoa!
And that was actually a really cool show. They opened for Megadeth, and that place was just insane. I mean, from the time Misfits started playing.
Where was it at? The Aragon?
Aragon.
The Brawl Room, yeah. When the Brawl Room gets going, like when it
that
starts to
place-
get rowdy, it is the
Yeah,
brawl room.
that
Like if
place
it's
was-
packed,
Oh, it was insane.
you know, because it's a big venue. I mean,
Yeah.
how many people you think they could fit in there?
Off the top of my head, I don't even know. Man.
Yeah, I mean, it's big because if it's kind of half-assed, like half filled, it's not as good. That place has to be packed.
This place was
Right,
packed
okay.
for that show. And I can remember I had my little cousin with me. He had never been to a concert before.
Popping his cherry that way.
yeah.
Huh? Right.
And he came over to my house and he's wearing like a polo shirt. And I'm just like, dude, no. So I gave him one of my old Megadeth t-shirts.
Right.
And I was supposed to keep an eye on him. And all of a sudden I lost him. And he comes back and he's got my Megadeth shirt just ripped in half. And I'm like, oh, shit, your mom's going to kill me.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is awesome. It was
Changed
really
his
cool.
life, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
so yeah, he's actually got like the Slipknot tattoo and stuff
Yeah.
now. So now he's a metalhead.
good.
But yeah, it was cool.
That's good.
But yeah, I saw them there, and then I saw them again at the House of Blues with Sick of It All, and that was another crazy.
Sick
show.
of it all. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that was a pretty insane show too. But I don't remember too much of Sick of It All at that show because I was
Just geared on the Misfits.
The Misfits were.
And Doyle was always playing guitar for him back then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doyle and Jerry Only, and I don't remember who their drummer was at that point.
Yeah.
But then Michael Graves was singing for him.
Doyle, I got to see him a lot the last few years because he's been touring like a madman. He came out with a couple albums.
Yeah.
Shout out to my homie Mark G. He's a huge fan, so it's like when Doyle's coming, he's like, "We're going." I'm like, "All right, dude, let's do it," you know. But Doyle is so loud. His guitar rig is it's the loudest. I've been to a million shows, but he makes his own cabinets. So what he does is he gets the 8x10 Ampeg bass rigs,
Mhm.
and then he wires them up his own way. He has his own head. I don't really know how to describe his head system, but he's playing out of like, I don't know, dude, 15 8x10 bass cabs for his rig.
Wow.
Like it's super loud. Like it hurts your brain. And then like he makes his own guitars too. And he does something crazy. Like it's not neck through body, but I don't know. He puts some kind of steel back. Like it's just like one solid, like
That's
2x4.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
dude, Doyle's rig is so loud. So everybody, if Doyle's coming through your town, check them out. And the Misfits are coming with Danzig. I'm going to go to that show in April.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so they got, and then Dave Lombardo is actually playing drums, dude, from Slayer.
Oh, nice.
Because they
nice.
did that for, or not Ozfest, Riot Fest
Riot Fest,
2016.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
at that. But yeah, the Michael Graves, I'm not that familiar. So it's cool that you're a big fan. You don't hear that all the time.
Yeah, so that was just like when that album came out, I think that was in 97, Famous Monsters. That was another one of those ones that it just kind of like really stuck with me. I remember, I'm almost positive there was like a song. Oh, it's like I'm trying to think of the Mars Attacks or something like that.
I remember that one.
Yeah, it was just I really enjoyed that album, and I still have it on my iPod and
Still
stuff.
jamming it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
my Misfit story was weird too. Like, I remember listening to Danzig and Mother, like when I was a little dude. You know,
Yeah.
like I remember my mom buying me the cassette, so probably like 10 years old, 9 or 10, and I really didn't know anything about the Misfits until way later. And then I was
Right.
like, oh, okay, like Danzig, like high school, like, oh, Danzig's the singer. He was the original singer, and then like checking him out. But I always remember being kind of like my nose up in the air because the recordings weren't always the best sounding,
yeah,
but like
yeah.
as you get older, you could appreciate that even
Right,
more.
yeah.
So then I started to just really dive deep into the Misfits, but it was more in my early 20s, but I always loved Danzig. And then, I always just,
He's just got a unique voice.
Evil Elvis, dude. I mean, he is the man.
Yeah.
He's got a goofy way about him, like in his personal life, and his ego's kind of out of control, but to each their own. I also
Right.
love Morrissey, and his ego's like really out of control. But yeah, dude, like Danzig, he's always been around my entire life, but I got into his solo stuff because of MTV,
Yeah.
and then obviously, like we said, with Metallica, with them covering it, and I just really put them on like for a long time. Like they were on heavy rotation for like, I don't know, 10 years for me, but Earth AD is my favorite. What's your favorite Misfits album?
I actually like the collections.
Okay.
Just I need that mix of them when I'm listening to them. Probably Last Caress is probably my favorite song that they do.
It's great.
Then comes around Halloween, I'm always doing Halloween.
And you got to listen to it on Halloween too.
Definitely.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
In fact, when I saw the Misfits play with Sick of It All, they actually opened up with Halloween, and that was really kind of neat to see, because they started off with like they brought a TV out, and the TV was like showing like different scenes from different horror movies and stuff. And then all of a sudden they just broke into Halloween, and that was like really badass.
Does Michael Graves do his own shit now, like his own solo stuff?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a while since I've checked him out. I'm not really a big political guy, and he kind of went off on like a political thing, so I kind of stopped following him a bit. But I remember he did a couple albums, and there were like these kids that got accused of murder. They were like Marilyn Manson type kids, like goth kids.
I read the book, the Memphis.
Yeah.
Is it the Memphis 3?
Memphis 3, yeah. And he did an album with those guys, or one of those guys.
There was a tribute. There was like a fundraising album to like get them out or raise funds to help them out.
He was a really big part of that.
Okay.
And I know he did like I think the dude's name was like Damian Eccles or something like that from the Memphis 3.
Yeah.
And he wrote some of the songs, and then Michael Graves sang them and stuff.
Remember Mike Patton was on that.
There was a whole
Henry
bunch.
Rollins was on
Rollins
that.
was on. I remember that.
Because it was a really goofy story for anyone listening. Like, check out, there's quite a few documentaries, and there was a really good book called The Memphis 3 that I read that really laid it out. They were innocent, in my opinion, for sure.
Well, are they still in jail?
They're out. That's weird that you brought it up, because I was just talking about this to a friend yesterday, and they are out. I mean, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't enough evidence, and it was just kind of one of those situations, like kids getting accused because of the music that they're into.
Right, yeah.
They had a bad, like one of the kids had a really bad upbringing, and their alibis weren't the best.
And
but the cops,
one of
it was
the
like
kids wasn't like all
there. Yeah, and you could tell it was one of those stories of like the local police. I think it was it was in Memphis, but like maybe the outskirts, but they just really didn't have their shit together as a police force, and they were just kind of doing half-ass work and just accusing the kids that look like the type that would maybe do that awful crime. But there's also Lords of Chaos was the same author that did that. Now that's a movie that just came out, and that's all about the black metal group Mayhem that burnt down churches and killed each other.
Yeah.
That's a crazy book everybody should check out. And now that's a movie. Like, it literally just came out. I don't know if it's a Netflix thing, but
I'll check that out.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And for all the Pantera fans out there, it's called A Vulgar Display of Power, and it really lays out the entire outline of that horrific day when Dime was gunned down. Kind of a buzzkill, sorry, but like if it's a good story to know. Not so much just because of Dime, but all the other innocent people that got killed that day, that piece of shit shot, and the people that got hurt, and like everything leading up to it. There was a lot of red flags before that. Like, that guy tried to creep through the back door like 6 months earlier in Columbus when Damage Plan was playing. So there was a lot of unfortunate, like, hey, this could have been prevented type of thing. But yeah, man, the Memphis 3. We're going all over, but the punk rock scene, that's cool that you were able to be there, especially in Chicago, because like I told you, I was a metal dude, so whenever I was going to Fireside, it was for death metal or grindcore, and sometimes they were trying to mix those two, and that didn't work out either. We were talking about that with Matt Aber on that episode. Like, it was like Cryptopsy, Poison the Well, Candiria, and like the death metal kids would go out for the death metal bands, and then the hardcore kids would go outside and smoke when the death metal bands were playing. Like, they were trying to cross it, but it never really worked. I mean, I like a lot of metalcore stuff too. Like, that kind of helped, but the two scenes just didn't really interact.
I want to say, I think I saw Madball play at Fireside too.
Okay.
And
is that still open? I think I've asked people before.
No, I don't think so. It's been
There's a documentary about Fireside on YouTube I saw.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so everybody check that out if you want to go back and dig into the nostalgic factor. But all right, we'll move on to a little bit more about Smugglers.
All right.
as far as finding you on social media, are there any social media platforms that you use more than others, like that people could reach you or check your stuff out? Like, how's all that going?
So, I mean, if you want to check out some, like, the pictures and stuff, of course, Instagram. I try and post at least once a day on there. And actually, like I was telling you before about Street Dogs,
Yeah, what's the story on that again?
So Street Dogs, the band from Mike McColgan from Dropkick, so they follow us on Instagram, and we possibly might be doing something with those guys too.
Oh, cool.
So that might be something. So yeah, they actually found us on there, and we've been talking
through Instagram.
Yeah,
okay.
I tagged them in a post because I was listening to them that day, and next thing I know, I'm getting a message from the band.
That's a pretty big deal, dude.
It was pretty badass.
I didn't say anything bad about them so far, did I? No, right? I don't want to mess it up for you.
No.
But hey, if they like this podcast, hit us up too. Not trying to plug myself, but hey, but no, that's awesome.
Yeah,
dude.
they're really cool dudes. So we might be doing something with those guys, and that all started with our Instagram thing. Another musician that found us through there was a dude named Jason Charles Miller. Okay. So he does like this Southern rock outlaw country thing, and like I was telling you about the storytelling thing. This dude can tell a great story.
Really?
He was the former singer of the band, the like metal band Godhead.
I remember that name sounds familiar.
Yeah, I want to say they were on Marilyn Manson's record label when he did his thing, but. Dude is like a badass singer, and he can play a mean guitar too. But it's like a Southern rock outlaw country type thing. Dude's also a huge D&D fan too. Awesome. He's got a show on I think it's like on Twitch with Geek and Sundry. He does the whole Dungeon Master thing.
Okay.
So yeah, he reached out to us on there, and I've been talking back and forth with him. He's a really cool dude. So yeah, it's our Instagram. Twitter, we're on that. If you're a D&D fan, I post a lot of our Dungeons and Dragons stuff on there. And
that's kind of helped, like you said too, right? Like it's its own, not culture, but niche, right? I mean, there's a diehard following. It is a culture.
It's a culture. The Dungeons and Dragons culture. I mean, it's a lot of this. I've noticed a lot. It's very similar to music. People who are creative, a lot of actors and just authors and people who like to write, people who like to create stuff. A lot of them play Dungeons and Dragons.
That's cool.
It's just escape from reality.
It is.
So a lot of people enjoy doing that. It's a good therapy too to just get in a different headspace.
Yeah, like get out of your own head, going to a show. Like you forget, or a sporting event, you forget about your problems of your life.
Yep.
And you put it all in. That's really cool.
It's just like back when I used to play guitar. I played bass. You get up on stage, you let everything out, and it's just like when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like you're in a battle, you're locked in. And it's just an escape from reality. It's a lot of fun.
It is.
I enjoy that kind
it
of
is.
stuff.
I played for the first time last year, like I told you, and then I just started again. I created my second character, but I put some thought into it. So the guy that I know that's really into it, he is a dungeon master, and he goes to coffee shops in the area, and he does it. I'll have to link you up with him.
Cool.
But he sat down with me and helped me create my character, and we just started doing this was last week, man. So I got to sit in on some sessions. Like what I had a hard time with, and I could tell maybe it was frustrating him, but I couldn't really get into character yet. I think that might have to come with time. Like not saying that it's silly,
right?
But I could tell no, he's seriously into it. It's like, okay, well, let me just take my baby steps. Maybe.
Well, it's just like improv, or like if you're kind of embarrassed your first few times playing music in front of people. Oh shit, I suck. Well, you might suck at the beginning. You're gonna get used to it. You get over that. It's a whole. You're getting into a different place. Like you're it's a different headspace. It's just improv, and it's you got to think how your character would think. And I know it's difficult for some people. Like you're sitting there and you're playing, and it's like, well, I want to play it like how I want to play it. I just want to kill a bunch of shit.
Right.
And you're playing like a video game, but play to your character's strengths and weaknesses. It's also good to good exercise in empathy too. I mean, you can play, you're not the smartest person, or like if you're a different race than a human, you might kind of learn, like, maybe...
I'm a dragonborn. I picked a dragonborn, by the way.
I swear to God, everyone's a dragon.
Oh, is that the cool?
Yeah,
maybe that's like, the metal one.
Man, it is.
I picked a white dragon too. I was like, I want to be a little bit mystique, you know. But everybody picks a dragonborn.
Oh my God, yeah. It's like,
I'm that guy.
It's like I'm in one group. It's like we got 3 of them. It's supposed to be like a rare thing. And it's like we got more dragonborn than anything.
That's what my buddy Mark said too. He's like, yeah, they didn't have the dragonborn until like the 90s, because he's been playing. He's like one of the OG D&D guys, like the 80s. Like he still has like the original booklets and shit. Like he was getting into it. Like I know it's a culture. But I was like,
a lot of metalheads were back in like the 80s and stuff. Well, I mean, there was a whole satanic panic thing.
Oh, was there?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that huge conservative Reagan wave back then. So
it was just you had the churches and stuff were kind of against it, and because there were demons on the cover of the books and stuff,
right, and monsters and ghouls.
So and you dealt with magic. So
cool.
A lot of people were against that.
What do you think the connection with what you're doing with the coffee is with Dungeons and Dragons? Do you do any like themes around the names or anything?
Yeah, actually we do.
Okay.
So we've got +1 to charisma, which if you play Dungeons and Dragon, charisma is one of your stats that you use.
Yeah.
So we, it's just like +1 to charisma, plus in real life, you wake up, you're in a shitty mood, you drink coffee, you feel better. So +1 to charisma. You can give people. And then we have another one, Coffees of Autumn Twilight. And if you're a Dragonlance fan, there's a book. One of the books that actually got me into Dungeons and Dragons was the novel Dragons of Autumn Twilight by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. That coffee is like my love letter to them, because it got me through a lot of stuff. Like, you can escape into a book, and that's always been something that I love, and I love reading. And that was kind of like, I needed to do something Dungeons and Dragons.
Cool.
And then we did that. And local artist, Adam Farster, if I'm saying his name wrong, I apologize. But he did the artwork for it, and it looks just like the original novel.
Oh, cool.
But it's got the Smugglers logo on it.
Yeah, I love your guys' logo. It's tight.
Thanks. That was actually done by this one dude, Matt Sharp. And Matt Sharp used to do all the artwork for 350 Brewing, and now he does it for Arrowhead Ales. And he does a lot of our labels too.
Cool. Yeah, you guys have cool labels, man.
Thanks, man.
For
Thanks.
sure.
Yeah, we got some really talented people.
Yeah.
Matt does the bulk of the stuff. And he's got like that kind of punk rock look to it at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's just...
I think I checked him out on Instagram, you had some stuff tagged. Like, Instagram's cool like that. Like, it's good for artists and people, like creative people, I guess, like ourselves, mixing all the different networking and just cool features and factors. But that's a cool backstory on the coffee and how it, Dungeons and Dragons inspired you to make certain blends or certain flavors. So to
it's
speak.
just it was just something that kind of, another way I like to put it is I threw up my geek flag. To say that, like, I mean, it was just, hey, I'm a geek. I like, I even have it on our Twitter and Instagram. I like punk rock, like Dungeons and Dragons. This is what we are. Love Star Wars. I mean, it's just that. Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that too. And it's, coffee doesn't have to be that thing,
prissy, kind of
where
deal.
It's like unapproachable, because it's like, you think of a coffee house, normally you think of some place that's got elevator music or something like that. You don't think of a place like Grindhouse where they've got the punk rock playing, they play Dungeons and Dragons, and it's just, I think like we were saying before, like craft beer and stuff too. It's kind of developed over time where people thought it was just some fancy beer, and now it's just like a lot of places are into punk rock, and they do the creative stuff.
Creative independent, like Smugglers is as independent as it gets, and a lot of the early punk do it yourself, the DIY, like a lot of this in the craft beers, like we had Bone Flower on here too. Cool. Shout out to Shavy from Bone Flower. Like, everybody's doing cool creative stuff, and a lot of it has those roots and like a lot of this 90s revival. Like you could see how everything like our youth, right? Like
exactly.
We're doing shit that we like and talking about stuff on podcasts that we like because of the 90s, so a lot of us,
it's a lot of that pop culture
that
stuff.
Pop culture, but we're creative and we're finding outlets to do new and cool things, man. So dude, Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
No problem, dude.
Love to have you again. And as far as Smugglers goes, like, plug yourself again. Like, where's a good place to find you?
Good place to find us: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Facebook, I try and keep a little more to the business side than anything.
Facebook's a hard marketing strategy, man. I mean, do you have luck on there?
Yeah, actually we do, but I think that has to do more with the craft breweries that we deal with, because they tag us.
The groups are good.
Plus, I had like a little built-in thing with the whole craft beer writing and stuff. So I had kind of a leg up on that.
Awesome.
So if you want to find us on there. Plus we'll be, we're at Grindhouse locally, Cafe Fresco, another cool place, Wise Way in Crown Point. And if you make the trek up and if you're interested in Dungeons and Dragons, I'll be hanging out at Lake Geneva at GaryCon. Early March. It's a celebration of Gary Gygax, who was the creator of Dungeons and Dragons.
Awesome.
So we'll be there, and I possibly might be out in Los Angeles at the end of this week for another charity event called the Auction of Many Things, which is it's an auction that all the proceeds and stuff go to kind of helping out the original creators of Dungeons and Dragons. We're working on a thing right now to go out there and do coffee for the event. So,
awesome.
Yeah. So
shout out to LA.
Yeah, that might be kind of cool.
Smugglers to LAX, right?
Yeah. Not a big fan of flying, but I might do that.
Maybe you could put some of that CBD oil in your coffee.
Yeah, there you go.
That might mellow you out a little bit.
I might need a little more than that.
right on.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, thanks for coming on. We'll
awesome. It was a good time.
Yeah, I'll have to have you on again. Maybe we could dive into Sepultura or something else. But everybody listening, please remember to subscribe to Musically Meditative Podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. So whatever way you're listening, please subscribe, give us a good rating, and please check out Smugglers Coffee. Like he said, he's on all social media.
Yep.
And then locally, Grindhouse, it's always there, right?
Yep.
So thanks again, Dave, for coming. Everybody else, adios. I'm musically meditated.
That's right.
I'm musically meditated. That's right. I'm musically meditated.
Producer my ass over there.